Welcome back to the Building Confidence podcast, where I, your host, Louise as a party, share what I've learned through the years, through the tears, so you don't have to. This is episode 98, and we're going to be talking about catastrophizing thoughts. This episode is being released at the same time that the Tradeswomen Owning Their Power coaching scholarships are open, so I will talk a little bit more about them later on. All right, catastrophizing thoughts. What do I mean? What do I mean by catastrophizing thoughts? I mean that I thought I recorded this podcast episode and then realized that the audio wasn't working. So I just recorded 8 minutes of me talking in silence. And then my brain went to, wow, you're really shit at this. You shouldn't host a podcast. Why don't you just give up on this now? That is catastrophizing. Another example of me personally, I'll give you some examples of others, but I have a lot of examples of catastrophizing thoughts, is yesterday, I was presenting at the Sydney Build Expo. I had a solo session. I paid someone to come and record me because I am a professional. And then I stumbled on my words. I used my notes more than I wanted to. And my brain told me that I was shit, that was totally a waste of time. I wasted money. I wasted the audience time. And I should just give up and not speak at all to a crowd ever again in my entire life. That was my catastrophizing thought. So there's 2 catastrophizing thoughts that I've had in the last 2 days, and I've had a lot in my life. What do we do when we have catastrophizing thoughts? We want to come back to reality. So let's go back to my first situation. Yesterday, when I was catastrophizing that I had stumbled on my words, used my notes more than I wanted to, meant that I should never speak to a crowd again. I look at the reality. What would actually be a career-ending speech to give? Possibly one where I insulted every member of the audience. So did I do that? No. In my mind, sometimes I have it's either amazing or it's totally trash. But there is a middle ground. And the middle ground is that you're average. The middle ground is sometimes the facts that happen. Generally, the facts that happen are the middle ground. We have our extremes either side, and then we also have like our, it wasn't great, and it was pretty good, and then we have our average, and we have our very bad, and our very good. And most of the time when we're catastrophizing, those circumstances are very unlikely. It is very unlikely that I have insulted everyone in the audience. But my brain was like, that was rubbish. You should never do this again. And then when I looked at it, what would actually be a rubbish presentation? One where I insulted the whole audience. But I didn't do that. So I come back to reality. How do I come back to reality? I take some deep breaths and I look at the facts. Now, I talk about circuit breakers in a few of the episodes, so I'm not going to go too deep into circuit breakers, but circuit breaker is like a physical thing that you do to calm your body when it's in that panic mode. Like drinking water, your deep breathing, going for a walk, eating a snack, that type of thing that physically calms your body down. But let's talk about the brain. Sometimes people try and think positive. They try and think you. So in that moment when I was like, it was really shit, it was bad, my husband was like, it's great. He only said that straight away, and then he saw how it was, and he's like, cool, you want some real feedback? And he's like, yeah, look at your notes, whatever. And I knew that I looked at my notes too much. But telling someone when they're down, and even telling yourself when you're down in that catastrophizing phase that it's great, it is way too far for you to believe that. But what's believable is maybe that it was average, that it was okay. But that feels a lot better than catastrophizing. And from that, it was okay, then you can actually regroup and review and actually take some actual answers out of that situation. Now, to the thing that just happened about, what are we in? We're 4 minutes into this episode, so I discovered that I recorded the episode without any sound, let's say about 10 minutes ago, and it took me about 5 minutes to reel myself back in, which was actually really great, because when I used to catastrophize, it used to maybe take me about a week or a month to kind of come back to reality, which is kind of annoying. Like, it's not a problem if it happens to you, but sometimes you really just don't want that to happen, and you'd rather be back on level ground without beating yourself up and just talking shit to yourself all the time. So we want to come back to reality. So when I realized that my podcast episode didn't have any audio to it, it was 18 minutes of me just talking in silence, that I was like, well, I must be shit at this. I can't be a podcaster. Like, why am I even trying this? Why am I even trying to get these words out? Why am I going to try and record this? No one wants to listen to this anyway. Then I quickly take myself back to reality. About 50 people listen to each of the podcast episodes that I put out. So one, that's not no one. I have actually had people message me and say that the podcast is good. So what is this situation? What is the fact about this situation that the podcast episode didn't record? It is annoying. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean I should never record a podcast ever again. It is just annoying. It's a bit of an inconvenience. That's the reality of the situation. And from it's annoying, I can be like, oh, that's so annoying. All right, I'll record again from that. Now, let's go to 2 examples of some of my coachees from different trades. So I have one of my coachees who's an electrician. She recently moved from, actually it's been about a year now, but she moved from one industry to another industry. Still an electrician in both things, but pretty much working with different components in a different setup. When she was at her first job, she used to get kind of attacked or like bully taught. I think I've spoken about bully teaching before, but where people would just give her heaps of shit if she made a mistake. And as an apprentice, you make a lot of mistakes when you're learning, especially when people aren't actually saying, here's an example of how to do it right. They're kind of like, here, fuck it up. Which is the situation she was in. So she was super nervous about getting wires around the wrong way, hooking things up different, like hooking things up wrong. Which is, it's okay to be nervous about that. But she was like, holy shit, like I can't. Like if I hook something up the wrong way, no one's ever going to work with me again. It'll be the end of my career. The mine site will burn down. That is it. Like end of career. Wires around the wrong way means it's over. So we brought it back to reality. We went with the circuit breaker that we put in was her having the water bottle with her because she was walking around the mine site. So that is really, really practical. So drink some water. The thoughts. What do we do about the thoughts? We come back to reality. I asked her, she was in a bit of a panic as she was telling me the story. And I said, so what would happen if you did get those wires around the wrong way? She's like, it just wouldn't work. So I'm like, you mean the whole mine site won't burn down and your career won't be over? She's like, no, I would just swap the wires around. And she's like, yeah, sometimes the wires might get a little bit hot and melt, or maybe the component might be damaged if I hook it up wrong. But still the mine site's not going to burn down. And that was kind of really coming. You could see when someone's body just like relaxes. They're like, oh, it's not that serious. The reality of the situation is not that serious. The catastrophizing feels pretty awful. But the reality is that it was a bit annoying. Like, if she got the wires around the wrong way, it'll be like, that's annoying, and swap them around or have to change a component, fill out some forms. But would she be the first person that ever hooks something up and then it breaks? No. No, she won't be, and she probably won't be the last. And will it be the end of her career? Probably not. Most likely not. I would say at least 99% of the time, no, it will not be the end of your career if you get something around the wrong way. So coming back to reality, realizing that, okay, in that panic situation, you bring your thoughts back online. The reality is if I get it around the wrong way, it will be a bit annoying. So then your mind comes back on board and you can actually think, okay, how can I confirm to get this on the right way? Should I ask someone? Should I just trust myself because I've done this a few times and I need to kind of take that faith in myself? Or is this the first time I've ever hooked up this component, so I need to ask someone? Do you understand the diagrams? If not, then maybe ask someone. If you do, confirm the diagrams. That kind of thing. You can bring that back on board when you are not catastrophizing. One of my other girls, talking to a supervisor. This supervisor sounded like a wanker every time that she told me a story about him, but she felt so panicked talking to him. She was like, if I talk to him and I say the wrong thing, he's going to think I'm stupid, then he's going to tell everyone else I'm stupid, and I'm never going to be able to get a job again. Catastrophizing. She was giving this guy so much power by saying that, yes, if something goes wrong and he doesn't like me from something that I've said, that's it. end of career. In reality, this guy was a bit of a wanker to everyone. So he actually, if he said something, not many people would actually believe him anyway. So he went to the reality of that. This guy did not have as much power as she was giving him, as she was catastrophizing what would happen to this guy. This guy definitely needed leadership training, but that was not in her control. Ideally, if the business approached me, I'd be like, get your leader's leadership training. But she had to do what she had in her control, which was actually just not giving him that much power. He didn't have that much power. He couldn't end her career by just being like, oh, she's a bit of a bitch. I don't like her, so I'm going to go and end her career. No, that doesn't happen. People who think that way typically don't have that many friends for them to listen to. People don't really believe them because they do it often. That is the catastrophizing. We want to come back to neutral. Most of the time, the things we do will be average. Where this catastrophizing can come into place is if we are, say, struggling with perfectionism, where it needs to be perfect or nothing at all. And in different situations, anyone can catastrophize. If you feel like you're spending a lot of time catastrophizing, and that's like your main go-to, maybe go to your GP and talk about that. So I recently got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I spent a lot of time in that catastrophizing, and I was like, okay, this is not okay. I really need some help here. So I went and I'm getting some extra help. And even in that, when I'm catastrophizing, knowing about that diagnosis kind of puts a little bit of a border on it. Because when we're catastrophizing, our brain will dump everything else on us, like an avalanche. An avalanche is typically caused by the foundation just being moved a little bit. A snowball coming down a mountain, a tree shaking, a bit of rain, or a lot of rain, but a lot of rain happens and then something moves at the foundation of the mountain. Everything comes crashing down. Sometimes our catastrophizing thought can be that little thing that moves at the bottom of the mountain. And then every mistake that we've ever made, every time someone said something awful to us, all the things that we don't like about ourselves will come crashing down. Going back to reality or putting a little boundary around that thought can help us stop that avalanche. Go back to the reality. So the reality is the main thing that I want to talk about here. But then that little boundary around the thought, for me, if I have that catastrophizing thought, I'm like, okay, yep, reality. I do reality, and I do, okay, is this part of this diagnosis that I have of the borderline personality disorder? Another thing we can often catastrophize if we are tired or if we are hungry. This is also a little barrier that we can put around it. I'm catastrophizing and I'm thinking more negatively because I'm tired, not because I'm a broken human and all of the mistakes that I've ever done. It puts a little fence around it. All right, so today we spoke about our catastrophizing thoughts, and when we find ourselves catastrophizing, we want to come back to the reality. We want to calm it down, look at what the reality is. Positive thinking, when we are catastrophizing, I believe does not work. It hasn't worked for me. So coming back to reality and coming back to that average. My presentation, I stumbled. I looked at my notes too much. It was an average presentation. It was not a career-ending shit presentation like my catastrophizing thoughts were. But hyping myself, being like, it was great, was not going to work either. Coming back to the fact that I did an average presentation is what calms me down. It lets me look at my presentation. Okay, I need to practice more. I might need to write my notes bigger. I might mostly just need to practice more. Anyway, then with my podcast episode not recording, I come back to the reality. Yep, it's annoying. That's all that it is. It's not, should quit my podcast. And then we've got our different thoughts about different things. So we want to make sure that we are coming back to the reality of everything. So come back to our reality, and then sometimes we can put a little fence around it, whether it might be a diagnosis you might have, whether it is that you're tired, that you're hungry, that you're thinking more negatively because of these different things. So we stop that avalanche. Alrighty, so this episode is coming out at the same time that the Tradeswomen Owning Their Power coaching scholarships are live. What are the Tradeswomen Owning Their Power coaching scholarships? So this round of scholarships is sponsored by BHP Mount Arthur site, which is in New South Wales. The coaching scholarships are for 6 months of coaching with me, where we would meet every second week for 6 months. And we work on your life goals, where you want to be, overcoming any confidence, anxiety, stepping into any leadership, doing any goals that you want to do. So they're open for application for any fitters, electricians, or mechanics based in the New South Wales area. So please apply. If you've got any questions about it, send me a message. There will be a link in the description box below to the application form. And from that application form, you'll be on my website. You can send me a message through there, or you can find me on social media at Louise as a Party Coaching. So from there, flick me a message, or you can apply. Please apply if you think this is something that is relevant to you or is useful. There are just a couple of questions to answer about what challenges you've been through, what challenges you're going through, what goals that you have. So then we can see, I hate picking the winner of the scholarship because it's not really like who wins at this, but put an application in because you never know what will happen. All right. So on that note as well, if you want any help or support with this concept that I've gone through or any of the other concepts that I go through on the podcast, please send me a DM or inquire through my website and book in a coaching consultation. I'd really love to chat to you about what's going on and to see if coaching with me would be useful for you right now. Please like, subscribe, share the podcast. This is how we get it into the hands of more amazing humans to get tools and resources that they need in the times when they need it without actually having to ask for any help. Remember, if you don't believe in yourself right now, please borrow my belief in you. I know you can do anything that you put your mind to. You might need to have a rest and eat a snack first, but I know you can do it. I will talk to you next episode.